Velith Shoran sat alone in the observation room and watched the blue planet spin slowly in the darkness. She had been watching Earth for 3 years now. 3 long, boring years. Her people called this assignment a punishment. The concordat of 12 species had better things to do than watch humans. Humans were primitive. They fought each other over small pieces of land. They had not even left their own solar system yet. They were children playing with fire while the adults of the galaxy built empires among the stars. Velith was old. She had watched 17 civilizations rise and fall. She had seen planets burn and species vanish into dust. Nothing surprised her anymore. Nothing moved her heart. She took a sip of her cold drink and checked the data screens around her. Everything was normal. Earth continued its endless dance around its yellow sun. Humans continued their endless wars and their endless dreams. Nothing ever changed. Then the alarm went off. Velith sat up straight and stared at the screen. The numbers made no sense. She checked them again. Then she checked them a third time. Something was entering the solar system. Something massive. Something that should not exist. She pulled up the long-range sensors and felt her blood turn to ice. A neutron star fragment. A piece of dead star. Heavier than mountains. Smaller than a city. It was falling toward the sun, and its path would take it right through Earth's neighborhood. Velith ran the calculations. In 18 months, the fragment would settle into an orbit near Earth. The gravity would tear the planet apart. The oceans would rise and fall like waves in a bathtub. The ground would crack open. Everything would die. She leaned back in her chair and let out a long breath. She had seen this before. A cosmic accident. Bad luck. The universe did not care about life. It simply moved forward, crushing everything in its path. She began to write her report. Subject: Planet Earth faces extinction-level event. Recommend continued observation for scientific purposes. No intervention required or suggested. This was the Concordat way. Watch. Record. Do not interfere. Let nature take its course. Velith felt nothing. She had stopped feeling long ago. Another world would die. Another species would vanish. The galaxy would continue without them. She sent the report and turned back to her screens. She would watch Earth die. It was her job. But then something strange happened. The humans found out. Of course they did. They had telescopes and satellites and curious minds. Within days, their news channels were screaming about the end of the world. Velith expected panic. She expected riots and wars and madness. Instead, she saw something she had never seen before. The humans stopped fighting. Not all of them. Not completely. But enough. Countries that had been enemies for centuries began talking to each other. Scientists who had never shared their work started working together. Leaders who had threatened to destroy each other sat down at the same table. Velith watched with growing confusion. This was not how species behaved when facing death. They were supposed to turn on each other. They were supposed to waste their final days in fear and anger. That was the pattern. That was always the pattern. But humans were not following the pattern. Within weeks, they announced something called Project Anchor. Velith read the details and laughed out loud. It was madness. Pure madness. They wanted to capture the neutron fragment. They wanted to use machines they had not even invented yet to bend gravity itself. They wanted to turn their death sentence into a gift. Impossible. Completely impossible. The Concordat's greatest scientists could not do what these primitive humans were suggesting. They would fail. They would die. This was just a way to give themselves hope before the end. Velith wrote another report. Humans displaying unusual collective behavior, attempting impossible technological solution, likely psychological response to inevitable extinction. Continued observation recommended. She sent it and went back to watching, but she could not look away. Every day, the humans surprised her. They built factories that worked around the clock. They launched satellites faster than anyone thought possible. They made mistakes and failed and got up again. Young people worked beside old people. Rich people worked beside poor people. They argued and shouted and cried and kept working. Velith had watched species die before. She had watched them give up. She had watched them tear themselves apart. She had never watched a species refuse to accept death. Months passed. The neutron fragment grew closer. Earth should have been in chaos. Instead, it was becoming something else. Something Velith did not have a name for. One night, she found herself talking to the blue planet on her screen. "What are you?" she whispered. "What kind of creatures are you?" The planet did not answer. It just kept spinning. And somewhere down there, billions of small beings kept working on their impossible dream. Velith told herself she was only watching because it was her job. She told herself she felt nothing for these primitive creatures. She told herself that when they failed and died, she would simply write her final report and move on. But late at night, when no one was watching, she found herself hoping, and that scared her more than anything else in the universe. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had not slept in 4 days. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook when she held her coffee cup. But she could not stop. None of them could stop. The main control room in Geneva was full of people from every corner of Earth. Scientists from Japan worked next to engineers from Brazil. Programmers from Nigeria argued with physicists from Russia. 6 months ago, half of these people had been strangers. Now they were family. Yuki looked at the massive screen on the wall. It showed the neutron fragment, still far away but growing closer every day. A ball of impossible weight, small enough to fit inside a city, heavy enough to crush a world. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like a tiger walking toward a wounded deer. But humans were not deer. Humans did not know how to accept death quietly. "Dr. Tanaka!" A young man ran up to her, waving a tablet. The new calculations from the Mumbai team. They found a way to increase the field strength by 12%. Yuki grabbed the tablet and read the numbers. Her heart began to beat faster. "This is good. This is very good. Get this to the satellite team immediately." The young man nodded and ran off. Yuki allowed herself a small smile. 12%. It did not sound like much. But in this fight, every small victory mattered. On the other side of the room, Commander Marcus Webb was shouting into 3 phones at once. He was a big man with tired eyes and a voice like thunder. He had commanded military operations on 3 continents. Now he was commanding the biggest operation in human history. "I don't care about the budget," he yelled. "I don't care about the schedule. Get those satellites into orbit, or we all die. Do you understand? We all die." He slammed down one phone and picked up another. Yuki watched him with respect. Webb was not a gentleman. But gentlemen could not save the world. In a factory in Germany, engineer Kofi Asante watched robots build things that had never existed before. Gravitational anchor nodes. Machines that could bend the fabric of space itself. 3 months ago, they had been nothing but drawings on paper. Now they were real. Kofi touched one of the finished nodes with his hand. It was warm. It hummed with energy. His daughter had helped design the power system. She was only 16 years old. When the crisis began, she had walked into his office and said, "Papa, I want to help." Now her name would be written in history, if there was anyone left to write history. The first test came on a cold morning in November. A single satellite carrying a single anchor node fired its engines and rose into the dark sky. Millions of people watched on their screens. Billions held their breath. The satellite reached position. The anchor node activated. For one beautiful moment, Yuki saw the numbers change on her screen. The gravity field was working. They were actually bending space. Then the satellite exploded. The control room went silent. Someone started crying. Yuki felt like a knife had been pushed into her chest. Months of work, gone in a flash of light. Commander Webb stood in the middle of the room. His face was stone. "What went wrong?" he asked quietly. "Power overload," someone answered. The field was too strong for the containment system. Webb nodded slowly. "Then we build a better containment system. We have 14 months. Get back to work." No one moved. Webb raised his voice. "Did you hear me? We failed. That means we learned something. Now we use what we learned and we try again. That is what humans do. We fail and we try again. Now get back to work." Slowly, people began to move. Keyboards clicked. Phones rang. The machine of human determination started turning again. Yuki went back to her calculations. Her hands were still shaking, but now they were shaking with something other than exhaustion. They were shaking with anger. Anger at the universe for trying to kill them. Anger at the fragment for existing. Anger at death itself for thinking it could win. She would not let it win. None of them would. The months passed like water through fingers. More tests, more failures, more successes. A 16-year-old girl in Sao Paulo solved a problem that had stopped the greatest minds in the world. An old professor in Cairo came out of retirement to redesign the power systems. A factory worker in China worked 30 hours without stopping because his children were counting on him. Nobody asked what country you were from. Nobody asked what language you spoke. Nobody asked about politics or religion or old grudges. There was only one question that mattered. Can you help? If the answer was yes, you were welcome. Veleth watched all of this from her station in the dark. She did not understand it. Her people would never behave this way. No species in the Concordat would behave this way. When death came, you accepted it with dignity. You did not fight the universe itself. But humans did not know how to stop fighting. It was their greatest weakness. And perhaps, Veleth was beginning to think, it was also their greatest strength. The final satellite launched on a spring morning, 14 months after the crisis began. The network was complete. 32 satellites, 32 anchor nodes, 32 small machines carrying the hopes of an entire world. Commander Webb looked at the screen showing the neutron fragment. It was close now. Very close. Well, he said quietly, let's see what humans can do. Veleth did something she had never done before. She sent a message to the High Council. She knew it was against the rules. Observers were supposed to watch, not act. They were supposed to record history, not try to change it. But she could not stay silent anymore. Her message was simple. The humans are attempting gravitational manipulation. Their technology is primitive, but their progress is remarkable. They may succeed. Request permission to offer assistance. This species shows unusual potential. They deserve a chance. She sent the message and waited. Days passed, then weeks. The High Council was silent. Finally, an answer came. But it was not from the Council. It was from an old friend, a counselor named Thren who owed Veleth many favors. Do not send any more messages, Thren wrote. The Council is watching you. They know what the humans are doing. They have known from the beginning. Veleth read the message 3 times. Her hands began to tremble. Why won't they help? She wrote back. The humans might actually succeed. This could change everything. Gravitational manipulation at this level could reshape the entire galaxy. Thren's answer came quickly. That is exactly why they won't help. Think, Veleth. The Concordat has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. We have power because we have technology that no one else has. If humans learn to bend gravity, if they learn to tame neutron stars, what happens to our power? What happens to our control? Veleth stared at the words on her screen. She felt sick. They want the humans to die, she wrote. They want the problem to solve itself. Thren replied. If humans fail, they die, and the Concordat loses nothing. If humans succeed, they become a threat. Better to let nature take its course. Better to let the universe do the dirty work. Veleth turned off her screen and sat in the darkness. For the first time in many years, she felt something she had forgotten how to feel. Shame. Deep, burning shame for her own people. Down on Earth, the humans were facing their own darkness. The accident happened during a routine satellite adjustment. A power surge. An explosion. 17 astronauts died in an instant. Their bodies drifted through space, surrounded by the wreckage of their dreams. The world stopped. News channels showed the faces of the dead. Young faces. Brave faces. People who had volunteered to risk everything for a chance to save their planet. In the control room in Geneva, Yuki Tanaka sat at her desk and cried. She had known some of them. She had trained some of them. Now they were gone. Commander Webb stood at the window, looking at the sky. His face showed nothing, but his hands were clenched so tight that his knuckles were white. Maybe we should stop, someone said quietly. Maybe this is the universe telling us we can't win. Webb did not turn around. The universe doesn't talk, he said. It doesn't give messages. It doesn't care. We are the ones who care. We are the ones who give meaning to things. And I say those 17 people did not die for nothing. I say we keep going. I say we finish what they started. He turned and looked at the room full of exhausted, heartbroken people. But I won't force anyone. If you want to leave, leave. No one will blame you. But if you stay, stay because you believe. Stay because you refuse to give up. Stay because 17 of our friends are watching from somewhere, and we owe them a victory. Nobody left. The work continued. Slower now. Sadder. But it continued. In her station above the solar system, Veleth made a decision that would destroy her life. She began sending data to Earth. Small pieces of information. Tiny corrections. Things that the Concordat knew but humans did not. the right frequency for the gravity field, the correct angle for the satellite formation, small gifts that might make the difference between success and failure. She was careful. She hid her transmissions in natural radio noise. She made them look like random signals from distant stars, but she knew the risk. If the Concordat found out, she would be punished. Exile, prison, maybe death. She did not care. For the first time in her long life, Velith had chosen a side. She had chosen the small blue planet and its stubborn, impossible people. She had chosen hope over safety. She had chosen to believe that some things were worth dying for. On Earth, Kofi Asante noticed something strange. His calculations were suddenly working better. Small errors that had troubled his team for months suddenly had solutions. It was almost like someone was helping them. He mentioned it to Yuki Tanaka one night over cold coffee. "Maybe we're just getting better," Yuki said. "Maybe the pressure is making us smarter." "Maybe," Kofi agreed. But he looked up at the stars with wondering eyes. "Or maybe we have a friend out there. Someone watching over us." Yuki laughed. It felt good to laugh. That would be nice. A guardian angel in space. They did not know how right they were. The final day approached. The neutron fragment filled the sky, a dark spot against the stars. The whole world held its breath, and somewhere in the darkness, an alien who had chosen to betray her own people watched and prayed to gods she did not believe in. Let them succeed, she thought. Please, let them succeed. The day came like any other day. The sun rose over Geneva. Birds sang in the trees. Children walked to school, but everyone knew that this day was different. This was the day that humanity would live or die. In the control room, Yuki Tanaka sat at her station. Her hands were steady now. The fear was gone. There was only focus, only purpose. She had spent 18 months preparing for this moment. She was ready. Commander Webb stood in the center of the room, surrounded by screens showing data from every corner of the operation. 32 satellites hung in space, forming a perfect circle around Earth's orbit. Each one carried an anchor node. Each node waited for the signal to activate. Status report. Webb said calmly. All satellites online. Someone reported. Power levels optimal. Targeting systems locked. We are ready. Webb looked at the main screen. The neutron fragment filled the view, a ball of compressed matter heavier than 1,000,000 mountains. It was close now. So close that telescopes could see the space around it bending and twisting. In 6 hours, it would reach the critical point. After that, nothing could stop it, unless they stopped it first. Begin activation sequence, Webb ordered. On the satellites, lights began to glow. Power flowed through circuits. The anchor nodes hummed to life, sending out invisible fingers of gravitational force into the void. Yuki watched her numbers. Everything was working. The fields were forming correctly. The network was holding together. But would it be enough? Could 32 small machines really catch a piece of a dead star? Around the world, people stopped what they were doing. They gathered in streets and parks and living rooms. They watched their screens and held each other's hands. Some prayed. Some cried. Most simply waited, their hearts filled with hope and fear in equal measure. In a small apartment in Tokyo, Yuki's mother lit a candle and whispered her daughter's name. In a factory in Germany, Kofi Asante held his daughter close and told her how proud he was. In a village in India, the young woman whose calculations had made the anchor nodes possible sat with her family and watched the sky change color. The neutron fragment entered the gravity field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Yuki saw the numbers change. The fragment was slowing. Not much. Just a tiny bit. But it was slowing. It's working, she breathed. It's actually working. But then the problem started. Satellite 7 is overheating, someone shouted. Power surge in Satellite 12. We're losing field coherence. The network was struggling. The fragment was too heavy. The forces were too strong. One by one, the satellites began to fail. Webb grabbed a microphone. All stations, increase power output. Push the nodes to maximum. Sir, that could destroy them. I know. Do it anyway. The satellites pushed harder. The anchor nodes screamed with energy. The gravity field tightened around the fragment like a fist closing around a ball. The fragment shuddered. Its path bent, but it kept coming. It's not enough, Yuki said, her voice breaking. We need more power. We need more time. There was no more time. There was no more power. They had given everything they had. And then, something strange happened. The satellite network began receiving signals. Small bursts of data, corrections, adjustments, information that made the field stronger and more efficient, information that no human had sent. Yuki looked at the data in shock. Where is this coming from? No one knew. But there was no time to ask questions. They used the information. They adjusted the satellites. They refined the field. In her station at the edge of the solar system, Velith Shoran worked faster than she had ever worked before. She was sending everything she knew. Every secret, every technique, everything that might help. Alarms were going off around her. The Concordat had detected her transmissions. They knew what she was doing. Ships were probably already on their way to arrest her. She did not care. She kept working. Down on Earth, the gravity field caught the neutron fragment and held it. The massive object slowed, stopped, and began to move in a new direction. Away from Earth, into a stable orbit. A safe orbit. The numbers on Yuki's screen settled into a steady pattern. She stared at them for a long moment, not daring to believe. It's stable, she whispered. Then louder. It's stable. We did it. We caught it. The control room exploded with cheers. People hugged each other and cried and laughed all at the same time. Commander Webb closed his eyes and let out a breath he had been holding for 18 months. Around the world, the cheering spread. From city to city, from country to country. Strangers embraced in the streets. Church bells rang. Fireworks exploded into the sky. Humanity had looked death in the eye. And humanity had said no. In the sky above Earth, the neutron fragment settled into its new home. It glowed with a dim, strange light. A second sun. A trophy. A reminder that the impossible was just another word for not yet. Velith watched from her station as the Concordat ships approached. Her screens showed the celebration on Earth. The joy. The tears. The faces of people who had been told they would die and had chosen to live anyway. She smiled. The door to her station opened. Soldiers entered with weapons drawn. Velith Shoran, one of them said, "You are under arrest for treason against the Concordat." Velith stood up slowly and let them put restraints on her wrists. She took one last look at the blue planet on her screen. "It was worth it," she said softly. The soldiers did not understand, but she did not expect them to. She had watched 17 civilizations die. Today, she had watched one refuse to die. And for the first time in her long life, she felt truly alive. 1 year passed. Earth was different now. The second sun, which humans had named Prometheus, rose every 12 hours. It gave a dim orange light that painted the sky in colors no human had ever seen before. Sunsets lasted for hours. Nights were never truly dark. The world had changed, and it was beautiful. But more than the sky had changed. Humanity had changed. The countries that had worked together to save the world did not go back to fighting. Something had shifted in the human heart. People remembered what they had done together. They remembered the factories that worked day and night. They remembered the scientists who shared their secrets. They remembered the astronauts who gave their lives. It was hard to hate someone who had helped save your children. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood on a balcony in Tokyo, watching Prometheus rise over the bay. Her daughter May stood beside her, a young woman now, studying physics at the university. "What happens next?" May asked. Yuki smiled. "I don't know, but I know what we proved. We proved that when humans work together, we can do anything. We can catch stars. We can change the shape of the universe. The aliens are still watching us," May said. "The Concordat, what will they do?" "I don't know that either," Yuki admitted. "But I don't think they expected us to survive. I don't think anyone expected us to survive. We surprised them. And I think we scared them a little bit too." She was right. Across the galaxy, the Concordat was having problems. Other species had watched Earth struggle. They had seen a young civilization face impossible odds and win. They had seen the Concordat do nothing to help. They had started asking questions. Why didn't the Concordat help the humans? Why do they keep advanced technology to themselves? What else are they hiding? The cracks in the Concordat's power were small, but they were growing. Species that had been silent for thousands of years were starting to speak. Species that had accepted their place at the bottom were starting to look up. Humanity had not just saved themselves. They had given hope to an entire galaxy. Velith Shoran sat in a small cell on a prison ship, waiting for judgment. The Concordat Council had found her guilty of treason. The punishment was exile to a dead world at the edge of the galaxy. She would spend the rest of her life alone, watching the stars from a planet where nothing lived. She accepted the sentence. She had known the cost when she made her choice. She did not regret it. The prison ship traveled for weeks through empty space. Velith spent her days thinking about Earth, about the humans, about the impossible thing they had done. Then, on the 32nd day of her journey, something unexpected happened. The prison ship stopped. Alarms went off. Guards ran through the corridors, shouting orders. Through her small window, Velith saw something that made her heart skip. Another ship was approaching. It was not Concordat design. It was something new, something strange, something human. The prison ship shook as the human vessel locked onto it. Velith heard the sound of cutting tools and breaking metal. Then the door to her cell opened. Commander Marcus Webb stood in the doorway. He was older now, with more gray in his hair and more lines on his face, but his eyes were the same, strong, determined, kind. Velith Shoran? He asked. She stood up slowly. Yes, I'm Commander Webb. We've come to take you home. Velith stared at him. Home? I don't have a home. Not anymore. Webb smiled. It was a warm smile, full of something Velith did not have a word for. You helped save our planet. You risked everything for people you had never met. As far as we're concerned, that makes you one of us. Earth is your home now, if you want it. Velith felt tears running down her face. She had not cried in 200 years. You came all this way, she said. You built a ship. You crossed the galaxy. Just for me? We don't forget our friends, Webb said simply. And we don't abandon them. That's not who we are. He extended his hand. Velith took it. On Earth, Kofi Asante watched the news with his daughter. The screen showed images of Velith arriving on Earth, surrounded by cheering crowds. The alien who had betrayed her own people to save humanity. The galaxy's first true friend. She looks scared, his daughter said. She's been alone for a long time, Kofi replied. But she won't be alone anymore. He thought about the signals that had helped them during the final moments of Project Anchor. The mysterious data that had made the difference between success and failure. They knew now where it had come from. They knew the price Velith had paid. Someday, Kofi thought, we will repay that debt. Someday, we will help others the way she helped us. That is what humans do. Yuki Tanaka met Velith on the shores of Tokyo Bay, where Prometheus was setting and painting the water orange and gold. Two strangers who had saved a world together. Thank you, Yuki said. For everything. Velith looked at the strange sky, the double sunset, the world that had refused to die. I watched you, she said. For 18 months I watched. And I saw something I had never seen before. A species that would not give up. A species that looked at the impossible and said, we'll see about that. I had to help. I had no choice. You did have a choice, Yuki said. You could have done nothing. That's what everyone else did. You chose to care. Velith nodded slowly. Your species taught me something. Something I had forgotten. The universe is vast and old and does not care about us. But we can care about each other. We can fight for each other. We can refuse to accept that death and darkness always win. She looked at Yuki with ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. That is your gift, human. That is what you give to the galaxy. Not technology, not power. Hope. You give hope. Yuki smiled and looked up at Prometheus, the impossible sun, the trophy of humanity's refusal to die. Then let's share it, she said. Let's give hope to everyone who needs it. Across the galaxy, other species looked at Earth's double star and wondered what the humans would do next, wondered if the old order was ending, wondered if a new age was beginning, and quietly, impossibly, they began to hope. The universe was vast and old and did not care, but humans cared, and that made all the difference.